September 7, 1940. 3:47 p.m. Over the Kent countryside at 22,000 feet, Flight Lieutenant Karol Kutlwasser banks his Hurricane hard left as tracer rounds tear past his canopy. 3 Messerschmitt Bf 109s are locked onto him. His radio crackles with Czech voices, voices that 6 months ago the British didn't want to hear, voices Churchill's staff tried to silence. Kutlwasser's fuel gauge reads critical. His ammunition counter shows 140 rounds remaining. He has maybe 90 seconds before the German fighters close the gap and finish him. Below, London burns. Above, 3 killers close in. Before we continue with Karol Kutlwasser's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to the skies over Kent, where Karol Kutlwasser was about to pull a maneuver that would make the Luftwaffe pilot behind him regret ever leaving France. Karol Kutlwasser was 24 years old when his country died. Born in Třebíč, a textile town in Moravia, he'd grown up watching fabric looms and dreaming of flight. His father owned a small printing shop. Karol was short, 5'6", stocky, with hands too thick for a pilot, everyone said. He proved them wrong at the Czech Air Force Academy in 1936. By March 1939, Karol was a qualified fighter pilot with 340 hours logged. Then the Wehrmacht rolled into Prague. No shots fired. The Czech military was ordered to stand down. Karol watched from his airfield as German officers walked into the hangar and declared his Avia B-534 biplane now belonged to the Third Reich. He left that night with 11 other pilots. They walked across the border into Poland with forged papers and 700 crowns between them. When Poland fell 6 months later, they ran again, through Romania, through Yugoslavia, through France. By June 1940, Karol Kutlwasser stood on the docks of Plymouth with nothing but the clothes he wore and a logbook proving 400 combat hours. The RAF recruiter looked at his paperwork and frowned. "Check. Yes, sir. We'll let you know." They never called. Between April and June 1940, 200 Czech military personnel made it to Britain. Pilots, navigators, ground crew, men who'd fought the Luftwaffe over France, who'd logged more combat time than most RAF rookies. They reported to Air Ministry offices in London, ready to fight. The Air Ministry sent them to holding camps in Cosford. No uniforms, no assignments, no aircraft. Winston Churchill's position was clear, documented in a War Cabinet memo dated May 19, 1940. The integration of foreign nationals into RAF squadrons presents complications of command, language barriers, and uncertain loyalties. Priority must be given to British and Commonwealth personnel. Translation: we don't trust you. The Czech pilots waited and waited and watched the news as Germany prepared to invade Britain. Flight Lieutenant Miroslav Liškutin was the first one Karol met in the Cosford camp. Liškutin was from Brno, tall and thin, with a mustache he refused to shave because his fiancée liked it. Before the war, he'd been a commercial pilot, flying mail routes to Vienna. He had 890 flight hours. He spoke 4 languages. The RAF had him washing dishes in the camp mess hall. "They'll never let us fly," Liškutin said one night in June. They were sitting on their bunks listening to the BBC report the fall of France. "To them, we're refugees, charity cases." Karol said nothing. What was there to say? Liškutin pulled out a photograph, his fiancée, Anna, standing outside a cafe in Prague. "We were supposed to get married in April. I wrote her last month through the Red Cross." No answer. Karol knew why. The Nazis controlled all mail from occupied Czechoslovakia. "When this is over," Liškutin said, "I'm going back for her. We'll open a flight school together, teach kids who want to fly for real reasons, not because someone ordered them to." Karol nodded. "I'll help. I can teach navigation." Liškutin smiled. "Partners?" partners. The problem wasn't that Britain lacked pilots. By July 1940, RAF Fighter Command had 434 operational fighter pilots. The problem wasn't even aircraft. Hurricanes and Spitfires were rolling out of factories at a rate of 120 per week. The problem was replacement rate. In the first 3 weeks of July, the RAF lost 148 pilots, dead, missing, or too wounded to fly. That's 7 pilots every single day. Training pipelines took 9 months to produce a combat-ready pilot. The Luftwaffe was killing them faster than Britain could train them. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding ran the numbers in his Bentley Priory headquarters and realized the terrifying truth. By October, Fighter Command would be destroyed through attrition. Not because they'd lose battles, but because there wouldn't be anyone left to fight them. Someone on his staff mentioned the Czechs. Dowding's response, recorded in his daily log, "If they can fly, put them in a hurricane." On July 10, 1940, the Air Ministry reluctantly authorized the formation of No. 310 Czechoslovak Squadron. 19 Czech pilots received posting orders. Karel Kutlwasser was No. 7 on the list. Miroslav Liškutin was No. 3. They reported to RAF Duxford, wearing mismatched uniforms and carrying logbooks the British couldn't read. Their squadron leader was Squadron Leader George Sinclair, a Scotsman who spoke no Czech and had serious doubts about the whole arrangement. "Right," Sinclair said on the first day. "I don't care where you're from. You fly British aircraft. You follow British regulations. You speak English on the radio. Understood?" 19 Czech voices answered in accented English. "Yes, sir." Sinclair looked them over. Short men mostly, older than the typical RAF pilot. Hard eyes, men who'd already lost everything. "Well," Sinclair said, "let's see if you can actually fly." August 8, 1940, RAF Duxford, 6:20 a.m. Karel Kutlwasser walks the perimeter of his Hurricane, tail number V7551. The morning smells like aviation fuel and wet grass. Ground crew watch him with curiosity. The Czech, who barely speaks English. His pre-flight checklist is muscle memory. Control surfaces, hydraulic lines, ammunition belts for the 8 303 Browning machine guns. Everything checks. The Hurricane is heavier than the Czech biplanes he trained on, but it's fast, capable. He spent 2 weeks learning its quirks. At 6:45 a.m., the squadron scrambles. 12 Hurricanes thunder down the runway into a grey English dawn. Karel's in the second flight, wingman to Liškutin. The radio crackles. Bandits, 109er, Angels 15, 40 plus confirmed. 40 plus. That means at least 40 German aircraft inbound. Karel's hands are steady on the stick. His heart rate doesn't spike. He's been here before, over France, over Poland. This is just another day of trying not to die. At 14, Zizar feet he sees them, a formation of Heinkel He-111 bombers, tight and disciplined, with an escort of Bf-109 fighters weaving above them like sharks. Squadron leader Sinclair's voice cuts through the radio. "Attack pattern Delta, go." The Hurricanes dive. Karel picks his target, a Heinkel on the formation's left flank. The German rear gunner sees him coming, tracer fire arcing out like white threads. Karel doesn't flinch. At 400 yards he opens fire. 8 machine guns converge on the Heinkel's left engine. Metal tears. Smoke pours. The engine seizes. The Heinkel rolls out of formation, trailing fire. Karel doesn't watch it fall. He's already pulling up, searching for the next target. A Bf-109 drops onto his tail. This is the moment. The critical moment. The thing that separates alive from dead. Karel doesn't run. Running means the 109 has time to aim. Instead, he does what Czech pilots learned fighting in Spain and Poland. He yanks the Hurricane into a vertical climb at full throttle. The engine screams. Gravity crushes him into his seat. The Hurricane stalls at the apex, flips, and Karel shoves the stick forward. Now he's diving, inverted, straight at the pursuing 109. The German pilot panics. He brakes left. Karel rolls right, cuts throttle, and drops onto the Messerschmitt's tail. Range 200 yards. He fires a 2-second burst. Rounds chew through the 109's cockpit. The German fighter spins, trailing smoke and pieces. Karel doesn't wait to see it crash. He's already turning back toward the bombers. At 7:04 a.m. the engagement ends. The German formation breaks and runs for France. Carroll lands at Duxford with fuel tanks nearly empty and 16 rounds of ammunition remaining. Ground crew count the gun camera footage. 2 confirmed kills, 1 Heinkel, 1 Bf 109. Squadron leader Sinclair meets him on the tarmac. "Not bad, Kuttelwasser, not bad at all." Lischkutin claps him on the shoulder. "That inverted dive was insane." Carroll shrugs. "If they expect you to run, don't run." Between August 8th and August 24th, 1940, Number 310 Squadron flew 63 combat sorties. They claimed 19 confirmed kills, 0 losses. By contrast, RAF Squadron 41, a veteran British unit flying Spitfires, flew 71 sorties in the same period, 14 confirmed kills, 4 pilots killed. The Czechs were hunting with a precision and aggression that startled the RAF. They didn't just intercept bombers, they chased them back across the channel. They dove through flak to finish wounded aircraft. They ignored standard tactics and flew like men with nothing to lose, because they had nothing to lose. Word spread through fighter command. The Czechs weren't refugees, they were hunters. By September, RAF officers were requesting transfers to 310 Squadron. Pilots wanted to fly with the Czechs. Ground crews wanted to service their aircraft. The squadron that Churchill almost didn't authorize was becoming legend, but the cost was coming. September 5th, 1940. 4:15 p.m. Miroslav Lischkutin's Hurricane takes a 20mm cannon round from a Bf 110. The shell punches through the cockpit and detonates against the firewall. Shrapnel tears through Lischkutin's chest and left arm. He manages to stay conscious, manages to keep the aircraft level, manages to radio, "Control, Red 3 is hit, returning to base." Carroll hears the transmission. He's 8 miles away, chasing a Dornier. He breaks off and races toward Lischkutin's last position. He finds him at 8,000 feet, Hurricane trailing white coolant smoke, flying at 140 knots, too slow, bleeding altitude. "Red 3, this is Red 7, I'm on your wing, stay with the aircraft." Lischkutin's voice is faint. Can't see clearly. Everything's red. "You're 3 miles from Duxford. Hold your heading. I'll talk you down." Carroll stays tight on Lischkutin's wing, watching the damaged Hurricane shudder and yaw. The engine is overheating. The propeller is vibrating. Lischkutin is flying on will alone. At 2,000 feet, the engine seizes. The propeller stops. "Red 3, you're dead stick. Glide it in. Wheels down now." Lischkutin doesn't respond. The Hurricane's nose drops. Carroll watches, helpless, as his friend's aircraft tips into a shallow dive and impacts a field 2 miles short of Duxford. The Hurricane cartwheels. The fuel tanks rupture. Fire blooms. Carroll lands 6 minutes later and sprints across the field to the crash site. Ground crew are already there, pulling Lischkutin from the wreckage. His flight suit is soaked with blood. His face is ash grey. Lischkutin looks up at Carroll. Did we stop them?" "Yes," Carroll says. His voice doesn't shake. "We stopped them." Lischkutin tries to smile. Tell Anna I tried to..." He dies before finishing the sentence. The medics cover him with a tarp. Carroll stands there, staring at the shape of his friend's body, and realizes he doesn't even know how to contact Anna. He doesn't know her last name. He doesn't know where in Prague she lived. Miroslav Lischkutin is dead, and the woman he loved will never know he was thinking of her at the end. That night, Carroll sits alone in the squadron barracks. The other Czech pilots are at the pub, drinking and trying not to think about Lischkutin. Carroll doesn't drink. He sits on his bunk and stares at the ceiling and thinks about the way the Bf 110 had come out of the sun. He thinks about the 20mm cannon. He thinks about how Lischkutin had no chance. RAF doctrine was clear. Hurricanes engage bombers, Spitfires engage fighters. Hurricanes were tougher, could absorb more damage, but they were slower. If a Hurricane got caught by a German fighter with cannons, it was over. The problem wasn't the Hurricane. The problem was predictability. German pilots knew RAF tactics. They knew Hurricanes would come in low and slow, focusing on bombers. They knew exactly where to position their fighters to ambush. Carroll pulls out his logbook and starts writing. Not flight records, tactical notes. He diagrams approach angles, altitude bands, timing sequences. He's searching for the thing no one else has seen. At 2:30 a.m. he finds it. The Luftwaffe's fighter screen, always positioned high, 20,000 to 25,000 feet, because RAF doctrine said hurricanes engaged at 15,000. The German bombers flew at 16,000. The RAF intercepted in the middle. But what if you didn't? What if you came in higher than their fighter screen and dove through it before they could react? It violated every doctrine. It meant climbing higher than your assigned patrol altitude. It meant burning extra fuel. It meant less time over the combat zone. Squadron leaders would call it reckless. But it would work. Carroll knows it would work because he's fought this way before. In Poland, in France, in the desperate skies where doctrine didn't matter and survival did. The question is whether anyone will listen to a Czech refugee with 3 months in the RAF. September 9th, 1940. Squadron briefing room. Squadron leader Sinclair stands at the chalkboard, outlining the day's patrol sectors. Standard doctrine: patrol at 15,000 feet, intercept bombers, avoid fighter engagements unless necessary. Carroll raises his hand. Sinclair pauses. Yes, Kuttelwasser. Sir, request permission to take my flight to 22,000 feet on next scramble. The room goes quiet. Other pilots turn to look at him. Sinclair frowns. Why? The German fighters expect us at 15,000. If we come from above, we control the engagement. And burn twice the fuel getting there, Sinclair says. You'll have 10 minutes over the combat zone instead of 20. 10 minutes is enough if we're not shot down in the first 2. Sinclair studies him. Carroll meets his gaze. Doesn't blink. Doesn't back down. Finally, Sinclair nods. Fine, 1 sortie, your flight only. Let's see if your theory holds. September 9th, 1940. 2:35 p.m. Carroll leads his flight, 4 hurricanes, into a steep climb. At 18,000 feet, his wingmen are breathing hard. The oxygen is thin, the engines are straining. At 22,000 feet, they level off. The radio crackles. Bandits 0905, Angels 16, 30 plus. Below them at 16,000 feet, a formation of Dornier Du 17 bombers heads toward London. Above them at 20,000 feet, 12 Bf-109s weave lazy circles. Carroll's flight is 2,000 feet above the German fighters. He keys his radio. Arm your guns. We're going through them. The Hurricanes roll inverted and dive. 4 aircraft screaming down at 400 miles per hour, punching through the Bf-109 screen before the German pilots even realize they're under attack. Carroll picks a 109 in a slow turn. He fires at 300 yards. The 109 explodes. Direct hit on the fuel tank. He doesn't watch it die. He's already pulling up, targeting the next. His wingmen splash 2 more 109s in the first 15 seconds. The German formation disintegrates. Fighters scatter. Bombers panic and dump their loads early, miles short of London. Carroll's flight circles once, guns empty, and heads for home. Total engagement time, 4 minutes. 0 damage taken. At the debriefing, Sinclair listens to the combat reports and says nothing for a long time. Then he looks at Carroll. 3 confirmed kills, no losses. That's exceptional. Carroll nods. It works because they don't expect it. Which means it will only work until they do expect it. Then we find something else they don't expect. Sinclair allows himself a small smile. All right, Kuttelwasser. You just became a flight leader. Teach the others your suicidal tactics. Between September 10th and October 31st, 1940, 310 Squadron flew 214 combat sorties using Carroll's high-altitude diving attacks. They claimed 87 confirmed aerial victories, 4 pilots killed, 9 wounded. By comparison, the average RAF squadron during the same period, flying standard doctrine, logged approximately 30 kills per squadron with higher casualty rates. 3 average RAF squadrons combined would equal roughly 90 kills. The Czechs, the squadron Churchill almost didn't authorize, matched that with 1 squadron of refugee pilots flying repaired Hurricanes and burning through fuel allowances that made logistics officers furious. Air Chief Marshal Dowding reviewed the numbers in early November and wrote in his operational diary, The Czech pilots have demonstrated exceptional combat effectiveness. Their unconventional tactics merit broader implementation. But broader implementation never came. The RAF establishment viewed the Czech tactics as improvised and unsuitable for standardization. The official doctrine remained unchanged. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Luftwaffe intelligence officers were filing reports about a specific RAF squadron that seemed to appear out of nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before German fighters could respond. A captured Bf-109 pilot, shot down by 310 Squadron in October, told his interrogators, "They don't fly like the British, they fly like they're trying to kill us all personally." He was closer to the truth than he knew. Josef Frantisek deserves his own mention here. Though technically flying with the Polish 303 Squadron, he was Czech, and he was the deadliest of them all. Frantisek was 27 years old, from Prague, short-tempered and brilliant. He'd already fought the Luftwaffe over Poland and France before reaching England. The RAF tried to assign him to a Czech squadron, but he refused. He wanted to fly with the Poles, who fought with the same vengeful fury he felt. Between July and October 1940, Frantisek flew alone. He ignored formations, ignored doctrine, ignored orders. He took off when he wanted, hunted where he wanted, and killed Germans with methodical efficiency. 17 confirmed kills in 4 months. That put him in the top 10 Allied aces of the Battle of Britain. He died on October 8, 1940. Not in combat, but in a flying accident. His Hurricane crashed during a routine patrol, cause unknown. He was buried in Northwood Cemetery with full military honors. His death was ruled accidental, but some of his squadron mates suspected he'd simply pushed himself too hard, flying when he was too exhausted to fly safely. Josef Frantisek never returned to Czechoslovakia. He never saw his family again. The Germans occupied his hometown until 1945. By November 1940, the Luftwaffe suspended daylight bombing raids over Britain. The attrition rate was unsustainable. German losses exceeded 600 aircraft. Fighter command held. Historians credit the few, the RAF pilots who defended Britain during those critical months. The official narrative celebrates British resilience and courage. It rarely mentions the Czechs, the Poles, the Belgians, the French, the foreign pilots who made up nearly 20% of fighter command and fought with a ferocity born from losing their homelands. No. 310 Squadron continued flying operations until the war's end. They transitioned to Spitfires in 1941, flew bomber escort missions over France, supported D-Day operations, and participated in the final push into Germany. Total wartime kills for 310 Squadron, 254 confirmed enemy aircraft. Total casualties, 74 pilots killed, missing, or died from wounds. In May 1945, the squadron prepared to return to Czechoslovakia. The war was over. The Nazis were defeated. They were finally going home. Except home was no longer free. The Soviet Union occupied Czechoslovakia. The communist government viewed the RAF pilots with suspicion. They'd fought for the West. They spoke English. They had dangerous ideas about democracy. Karel Kutlwasser returned to Prague in June 1945. The city looked the same. The streets were familiar. But everything was different. He found his father's print shop closed, windows boarded up. His father had died in 1943. Heart failure, the neighbors said. His mother had moved in with relatives. Karel tried to join the reconstituted Czech Air Force. His application was denied. The new government didn't want pilots with Western ties. He found work as a mechanic at a bus depot, fixed engines, rotated tires, went home to a small apartment, and didn't talk about the war. He married in 1948 a schoolteacher named Helena. They had 2 children. Karel taught his son to fly model airplanes in the park. He never told him about the Hurricanes, the Messerschmitts, the diving attacks from 22,000 feet. When people asked what he did during the war, he said, "I was in England for a while." In 1968, during the Prague Spring, Karel Kutlwasser gave a single interview to a Western journalist. He was 52 years old, still working at the bus depot. The journalist asked, "Do you think Britain appreciated what you and the other Czech pilots did?" Karel thought for a long time before answering. "Churchill didn't want us," he said. "The RAF didn't trust us, but the Germans feared us. That's enough. What happened to your friend, the one you mentioned, Lishkutin? He died fighting for a country that wasn't his own, protecting people who didn't know his name, like most of us. Do you regret it? Karol smiled. Regret what? We had nowhere else to go. Karol Kutlwasser died on March 17, 1959, at age 43, heart attack while repairing a bus transmission. The obituary in the local Prague newspaper mentioned he'd been a mechanic for 14 years. It didn't mention the war. He's buried in Olszany Cemetery in Prague, alongside thousands of other Czech citizens. His headstone reads, Karol Kutlwasser, 1916-1959, beloved husband and father. There's no mention of the RAF No. 3 and 10 Squadron or the 87 German aircraft he helped shoot down. Nothing about the tactics he developed that saved dozens of British lives. Nothing about Churchill's initial refusal or the way Karol proved him catastrophically wrong. In 2005, a British aviation historian named David Ross was researching Battle of Britain kill records and noticed an anomaly in the data. No. 310 Squadron's numbers were significantly higher than the statistical model predicted. He started digging through squadron records, combat logs, and pilot debriefing reports. That's when he found Karol Kutlwasser. Ross tracked down Helena, Karol's widow, who was still alive at 91. She gave him Karol's logbook, the one he'd kept throughout the war hidden in a trunk in their attic. Inside were the tactical diagrams from September 1940, the high-altitude diving attack plans. The calculations proving why it would work. Ross published his findings in 2007. The tactics developed by Czech pilot Karol Kutlwasser in September 1940 were later adopted, without attribution, by several RAF squadrons in 1941 and became standard doctrine for high-altitude intercept operations by 1942. In other words, Karol had invented a new way to fight. The RAF used it for years, and nobody knew his name. In 2010, the RAF formally recognized the contributions of No. 310 Czechoslovak Squadron with a memorial plaque at RAF Duxford. The ceremony was attended by 3 surviving veterans of the squadron, all in their 80s. The plaque reads, "In memory of the Czech airmen who flew with the Royal Air Force during World War II. Their courage and sacrifice helped save Britain in its darkest hour." No individual names are listed. Karol Kutlwasser isn't mentioned. But in the archives at RAF Duxford, there's a Hurricane marked with the tail number V7551. It's the aircraft Karol flew in 1940, the one he used to develop his diving attack tactics. The museum placard next to it reads, Hawker Hurricane MKY, flown by No. 310 Squadron during the Battle of Britain. This aircraft participated in numerous successful engagements against Luftwaffe bombers and fighters. Tourists take photographs standing next to it. They don't know that the short Czech mechanic who flew it rewrote the rules of air combat, while Churchill's government debated whether he should be allowed to fight at all. Stories like Karol Kutlwasser's disappear if we don't tell them. Men and women who changed history but never got credit, who fought wars and went home to ordinary lives and died quietly, their contributions forgotten. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so we can keep bringing you these forgotten histories. And drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Are you a veteran? Did someone in your family serve? Do you know a story like this that needs to be told? We're here to make sure heroes like Karol, Miroslav, and Josef are remembered. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring about history, and thank you for helping keep these memories alive.